know that Christopher Columbus began the European conquest and invasion of the Americas when he reached the Caribbean in 1492, but he wasn't the first European to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Nearly 500 years earlier, the Vikings had already reached modern-day Canada, and we know this because in the 1960s, archaeologists found a Viking settlement in Newfoundland. Incredibly, those famous raiders and traders from medieval Europe had crossed the Atlantic in a boat like this. However, this begs the question, who was the first Irish person to cross the Atlantic? Now, in the first episode of Transatlantic, a new Irish-American history podcast, created by myself, Finn Dwyer, and Damien Shields, we explore who was the first Irish person to successfully cross the Atlantic, and there are three intriguing candidates. The first is St. Brendan, an early Irish monk and legendary navigator, and he may well have crossed the Atlantic in the 6th century, sometime around the year 520. Now, the second candidate is that there may have been an Irish person on those Viking ships that crossed the Atlantic around the year 1000. But at the very latest, we definitely know an Irish person had crossed the Atlantic by the year 1511, when a man from Galway died in the Caribbean. So what's your take? Who do you think was the first Irish person to cross the Atlantic? I think there's a really high likelihood that it was actually a woman, and we explored that theory in the first episode of Transatlantic, a new Irish-American history podcast. You can get the links to that episode in the show notes below. But I think it's probably a woman. Now, I'd love to hear your opinion too, so drop a comment below about whether you think it was a monk, a Viking, or that 16th century sailor. And also, don't forget to check out that episode of Transatlantic. It's in the show notes below, and you can hear me and Damien give our theories about who we think the first Irish person to cross the Atlantic was.